HITEC Spring Leadership Summit, Technology Tomorrow, and to the Women's Forum, Better to Belong, Moments That Matter. Today's session will feature powerful Latinas like Yesenia Reyes, Managing Director, Accenture, Luz Esparza, Managing Director, Accenture, Franzetti, Vice President, Digital Enterprise Services, Cisco, Magda Yrizarry, Chief Talent and Diversity Officer, Verizon, Cardoso, South Market Unit I&D Lead, Accenture. To kick us off, please welcome Nellie Borrero, Managing Director, Accenture, and HITEC Board Member.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Women's Forum today. Just listening to that lineup gets me excited. I hope you're excited as well. For those of you that have participated in this event in the past, you know that I always say I am a huge fan of HITEC. I love how they bring us women together, Latina women, to expand our network and to learn from each other. So thank you for returning to one of our sessions and joining us today. For those of you that are attending for the first time, I guarantee you this will be value added for you, and I want to make sure that you return to future events as well. So thank you for taking the time to invest time in you. Today, we're going to talk about some really exciting things. I want to talk about the order that we're going to have in this program. We're going to hear from Carolina and Yesenia, who are going to have a fireside chat on our latest research at Accenture. And the research is titled Better to Belong. And we all know that it's better to belong. That's not new to us. But what's going to be new is to really focus on those moments that matter for us. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in just a second. Then we're going to transition to a panel where we will hear from Luz, Marieli, and Magda. They'll introduce themselves when we start. They are incredible women as well. All five together are just wonderful. And then we're going to go into breakout sessions where you'll have an opportunity to have conversations amongst yourselves and with some of the panel members. So I want to once again remind you, for those that have participated in the past, to be present in the moment and just take it all in. So before I go to Magda and Yesenia, let me just say just a few words about moments that matter. In the past, we have talked about how resilient we are, the grit that we possess, and the power that we demonstrate. As we're engaging in these ways that we show up, as we're going through our journey, when we get caught up in this resilience and this grit and really just really tuning into our power, sometimes in that process, we miss those moments that matter. We miss the cues that were associated with that. We miss the significance that was associated with that. So today, we're going to talk about pausing. Slow down and think about those moments and really focus about how you're better in tune with them going forward from today on. So let's dig into this conversation. I'm going to turn it over to Carolina and to Yesenia, and they're going to start talking about this research and all the wonderful gems that are coming out of it. So over to you, Carolina and Yesenia.
Thank you, Nellie, for the warm welcome. Hola, my name is Carolina Cardoso. My pronouns are she, her, ella. I'm a senior manager at Accenture. As part of my role at North America I&D Relations Lead, I am responsible for leading Accenture's externally focused strategic priorities and initiatives to what we're here to talk about, to attract, retain, and advance our talent. I've been looking forward to this moment, Nellie, as you talk about moments in this rich conversation. So look forward to connecting with you and continuing the rich conversation.
Hello there, I'm Yesenia Reyes. I'm grateful to be here. Thank you to HITEC and thank you to all of the panelists that are going to be sharing today. This is an important topic for me as a leader, right? As a Latina in the workplace, as a leader in the workplace, and as an inclusion, diversity, and equity practitioner, facing our clients, being active in this space is something that is incredibly meaningful. It is a journey, and I'll share that through some of the conversation that Carolina and I will have, and just welcome, right, the dialogue that's going to ensue from this time together.
Thanks, Yesenia. And touching on that, as we think about our latest research, the Better to Belong, it really brings to the forefront the things that we need to get right. And part of this is power of belonging, the things that Nellie talked about. We recognize as Latinas, we all feel the importance of feeling a sense of belonging. So it's this conversation I want to have with you. It's more around understanding that, as we think about Latina women in particular, how do we benefit from these moments? How do we recognize them? How do we evolve? How do we embrace them? It's without cause as we think about today's competitive environment, as we think about the employee experience, which is the forefront of the conversations that I've been leading in with our leaders. It's really essential for us to talk about these moments, especially the ones that help shape us, grow. Some of them bring along some pain points, but it's all anchored on these moments. And so, Yesenia, I want to start a conversation with what does that moment that mattered mean to you? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, thanks, Carolina. It's as I've been thinking about it and, having read the research, right, we can be very academic about it. And we know that moments that matter are embedded in the life cycle, right, in the talent life cycle. And we can talk about, what's the onboarding experience? What is the reward and recognition experience? How do we move roles between our jobs, right, life events and leaving, right? That's the academic exercise of moments that matter. But there's another layer to this. And I think this is the richness of perspective that we all bring that really lets us dive deep into behind those moments are, being accountable for our actions as leaders, right? Having accountability and authority to deliver, right? Kind of on the promise that we make to our employer and to our constituents. But also on the reverse of that is being held accountable to speak up for the things that need to be spoken up for, right? If we see behavior, if we see opportunity, if we see, a change in process, right? That comes with, this ability to speak up in the workplace. It's also about respect, right? These moments that matter are so deeply personal, right? As an employee navigating the workplace, these moments are going to mean something to me. It might not mean the same for someone else. And so as a leader, as someone who is executing on the promise of the workplace, I have to be open and ready and available to respect the moment, to value ideas, to look for, right, the cues of, beliefs that might be different than mine, but that have a place and a safe space in the workplace. I also think about a moment that matters is the ability to handle situations, especially difficult situations, in a way that, that deals with the incident, the event, the moment, right? It's like I want to make sure that, that I have a meaningful work experience, and I have to make sure that our employees also have that. And so the ability, the processes, right? The culture that supports, right? All of us working to address, difficult situations is also something that is important in the entire exercise of understanding, belonging, of understanding moments that matter. And then lastly, but also as importantly as, as all of these other points is the ability to recognize community, right? Not only, again, as an individual, do I want to know that I'm, with like-minded individuals, that I have a place to belong from an affinity perspective, from an interest, from a skills perspective. So that community, becomes really important to me, one, from my sense of belonging, but also from my sense of purpose, right? More and more, and the research shows, right, that our workforce experience becomes coupled with, wanting to express our values, our purpose, right, in our communities. And so to me, right, getting the workforce moments right come layered with understanding the responsibility to be sensitive, to be open, to be learning, and to be courageous about, accountability, respect, difficult situations, and creating community.
I love those points, and it's this notion around purpose. I mean, these past 2 years, we've seen so much change all around us, right? Impacting both the way that we show up at work, in our personal lives. Along with that, Yesenia, we were talking about before coming onto this call was around talking about the impact, right, on organizations. And some of the terms that we're hearing are like the great resignation or the great reshuffle. When you think about the talent life cycle and the work that you're doing and the work that you are experiencing firsthand as well, what are some of the moments that matter to employees as you think about the employee experience? And also following into that question is like, what is the impact that these key moments have in the sentiment as employees?
I'll say that I have kind of three moments, right? That as I talk to our Accenture community, and also beyond, right? I'm lucky enough to be able to be a coach and mentor to folks outside of Accenture. I'll talk about three that I hear most often. One of them is we'll call it the onboarding experience, right? Kind of the day one, whether it's day one in a company as people are moving, right? Right now in their in employment, whether it's day one on a new team, right, on a new project, in a new skill, right? How we make that person feel, right? The table that we set of generosity, right, of community, of welcoming matters. Right. So I think all of us can recognize when we were new to something, and the people that are already there, right, have an opportunity to, and I think of things in distance, right? They can either close the distance or they can widen the distance, by the way that they behave, by the words that they speak, right? By the way that they demonstrate through their actions and behaviors, right? A welcoming environment. And I'll just give one example to that. I recall, a moment when I was new in the workplace, and someone made it a point within my first couple of weeks of joining, right, that group, that experienced hires, right, someone that came from the outside, as I did, didn't make, at the time what we called, a senior leader. And I thought, well, how interesting, right? That this person has taken, right, me as a new person and decided that that's the message that they'd like to convey. And, I have a choice in that moment. I can take that as a defeat, right? I can play into that moment, or I can take a step back and say, all right, well, what does this reveal to me about the opportunities ahead of me? And for me, that meant that I was able to lean into, volunteering inside my organization to dispel that myth, right? Let's show people that, that people from outside experiences, from other organizations can come in here and thrive and do well for the business, right? So we can take it as an opportunity. It helps us analyze, right? What is happening in the workplace that needs to shift, right? Either from a process perspective, from a culture and behavior perspective. And so I took it as an opportunity. And 16 years later, right? It's like, I'm still here, I'm still working on this, right? Because it's all a journey. But I didn't sit in the negative side of that conversation. I sat on the positive side on it, right? And it just activated, right, kind of the purpose in me, right? The sense of service, the sense of wanting to change the environment. So that's one example. So as leaders, as we're all sitting here thinking about, what's the next time that we encounter someone, that's new to the group, we have an opportunity to create a moment that makes them feel welcome, that gives them a sense of belonging, that gives them, an optimistic opportunity. And I think we should all be cognizant of that. I'd say another important moment is when we advocate for others, right? Often as Latinas, right, we're sitting in rooms where decisions are being made, where roles or opportunities for progression, opportunities for change are coming about. That when we advocate for others, right, we're also able to activate, on these moments that matter. And so personally, I have been the beneficiary of lots of those conversations, right, where someone is speaking up on my behalf in another room when an opportunity comes up. And I think that, as leaders, right, as we are all, growing in our careers, making sure that we have line of sight to how we open the doors for others continues to be an important part of our experience, of our journey, and what will make an impactful moment in the life of our employees, of our workforce, of our people. And then it's about advocating for self, right? We can't leave ourselves behind in this equation of moments that matter, of taking the cues, of being cognizant of where we are, right? I had the opportunity last year to rethink, how do I want to align in my career? How do I want to show up? What do I want to do from expressing my career? How do I want to feel about my work? And I'll tell you that the inside talk track of that journey was one where I could say all the reasons why I shouldn't speak up for this, but the outside talk track around me was one of incredible support. So I think another, piece of all of this moment that matters of thriving at work is that we don't self-filter, right? One of the things that I often coach on is don't say no. Don't be your first no, right? Kind of voice the question, voice, the concern that you have, voice the idea, and, let someone else be in the boat with you for a path to how do we get to yes.
I love the how do we get to yes, and I love the hearing, moments that matter are anchored in a choice, as you said. It's the reframing, reshaping, evolving in our own journey. And with that, I want to say thank you, Yesenia, for sharing some of your wisdom and your experience. And I'm going to turn it over to Nellie to guide our conversation, continue the conversation. So back to you, Nellie.
Thank you, Kaina. Yesenia. Yesenia, I love that line. When opportunities come, you have to be open, ready, and available. I just wrote that down and put a few stars around that. So thank you for sharing that. So we're going to now go into the panel section of this event today. And we're going to start with having our panelists introduce themselves. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to ask them to share their name. We're going to ask them to talk about their cultural identity, the role that they have today, and one word that describes them. So really quickly, I'll lead by example. Nellie Borrero, cultural identity from Puerto Rico, role managing director at Accenture. One word that describes me is courageous. So I'm going to go over to Magda, and Magda, get us started.
Thank you, Nellie. Magda Yrizarry, and I am Puerto Rican. I am Verizon's Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer, and my word is blessed. I am very blessed.
Awesome, thank you. Marieli, over to you.
My name is Marieli Bandas Franzetti. I'm also from Puerto Rico. I didn't know that all of us were, so that's awesome. I'm Vice President supporting the supply chain team under IT at Cisco. I'm based in Austin, Texas, and the word that I picked to describe myself is optimistic. But I asked this question to my husband last night, and he said persistent. So I don't know if that's good or bad.
I like them both. We'll just blend them. We'll keep both. All right, Luz, over to you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Luz Esparza. I'm first generation Mexican. Parents immigrated back in the 70s to the US. I was born here. I'm a managing director that manages our cloud first practice here in the West Coast. I'm based out of Los Angeles. And the word I chose to describe me is bold.
Nice. I love them all. So we have courageous here, we have blessed, optimistic, persistent, and we have bold. So we're about to have a great discussion. So I'm going to ask this question of all three of you. And the way we're going to go about this is I'm going to ask you to share one of those moments that mattered. I don't want you to get into the feeling of it. I don't want you to get into the impact of it, because we're going to dig into that a lot deeper as we continue talking. But I want you to sit with what was that moment, and I want the audience and the participants to sort of get a really good flavor of what that was, and then we'll dig in. So we're going to go in the same order. So we're going to go with Magda. What is one of those moments that mattered or that matters?
Okay, Nellie, I'm going to break a rule here. I'm going to just use one positive and one negative. And so one positive was joining New York Telephone and finding myself a member of the Hispanic Support Organization. Okay. A negative moment for me was in 2017 during a conversation having to do with the Muslim travel ban.
Okay, I can't wait to hear more. And you didn't break the rules. You basically course corrected me what we had agreed on. Positive and negative. So thank you, Magda. Marieli, over to you.
I'm going to blend. I think they blend between positive and negative. But one, I will say 2017 too. When you think about the things that happen around the world and how it keeps changing, I was saying 2017, Hurricane Maria really showed me so much of resilience around people, and it completely changed my perspective in life. When you see so many of your family and friends going through so much, and here we are, pandemic, natural disaster, Ukraine. So the world keeps changing on us and how we adapt to these situations. Career-wise, I had, I was blessed to have a second level leader that really pushed me to do a very different role. She pushed me to get out of the comfort zone. And it was many years doing a role that I was an expert for, that area. And she wanted me to do something that I didn't know nothing about. And that felt very out of comfort, but it challenged me to get out of the comfort zone. And that was a really big stepping stone in my career.
Excellent. Can't wait to dig into that as well. Luz, over to you.
Yeah, I think the moment I chose kind of said both positive and negative out of it, but it was a very challenging conversation I had where I really felt the need to speak my truth, felt that the leadership in place wasn't listening. And so I kind of stepped up, and that was a very hard realization, a very challenging conversation that had both a negative and a positive result. So.
Great. So we're going to take these examples and we're going to dig in a little bit further. And Luz, we're going to stick with you here for a few seconds. How did that moment make you feel? I want you to talk about the process of the feelings as you were going through that, as you had to speak your truth. And I love that statement, because I think many of us have found ourselves in that situation. And for those that will find themselves there, I think they'll learn from what you have to share today. So let's talk about how you felt in that moment.
I think in that moment, there was a bit of fear in my pit of my stomach. You know, what is going to be the outcome? I thought it was important for me to speak up, but I was, fearful what could be the potential outcome. It was a senior leader in our organization who had, broad influence. And so I thought that first feeling was a bit of fear, and then turned into this is important, and courage, which allowed me to have that challenging conversation.
I think that's excellent. And when you're going through that fear piece, Luz, again, just wanting to be able to share that experience with so many, what helped you move past that fear? Can you dig into what was the point that you said, I'm fearful, but I must move forward with this?
It was knowing that I had support. I knew that, worst case scenario, my family was always supportive. I felt supported even within, Accenture itself, that this was something that was important. And I think knowing that I had that support really helped me, walk into that room and have that challenging conversation.
And that is really, really important, because I think when people feel a certain level of support, when they've built that and they've earned that, it makes it easier to take those risks. So thank you for sharing that, because we all have to ask ourselves, what is our support structure today? What does that look like? Is it solid enough? Or do we need to do more to evolve and build that support structure? So thank you so much for sharing that, Luz. Magda, I'm going to go over to you again with this feeling question. And you talked about two great examples here, as well as I want you to talk about what you were feeling.
Thanks, Nellie. When I joined New York Telephone, now Verizon, it's one of our legacy companies, I really was looking for community. I was looking for connection. I was brand new to the firm, and it's a large company. And the Hispanic Support Organization gave me a place to connect into. And so, building on what Luz and you were just saying, Nellie, that support system is so important. And sometimes it comes as a gift. Many of our organizations have employee resource groups. You don't have to go out there and create it and invent it. You just have to make a choice to lean in and become a part of it. And so for me, that was really important. First of all, that I had access, that it existed. So for anybody listening, if they don't exist, you might want to be that leader that helps create that community. But if it does exist, it's kind of how do you then? And we're very busy. So we're making choices about our time. That was a choice that helped serve me for the long term. An immediate network, an immediate support system, and this sense of belonging from one part of my identity as a Latina, which was very important to me. Contrast that with the feeling of being an outsider. And so I walked into a room with fairly senior people having a conversation about the Muslim travel ban in 2017. And also at the same time, some of the immigration conversations that were going on that some of us might remember around Mexico in particular, Luz and Wall and these pieces. And ICE was all over the place. Like, I live in a very kind of rural suburban part of New Jersey, and seriously, the immigration enforcement group was in this area. I remember feeling at risk, scared, outside, not belonging. And the conversation about people going back to whatever nations of origin was very prominent. So I walk into this conversation. That's not what they were saying, But what they were saying was those people, how must it feel for those people, you know, who are feeling that way? And so I said, I'm those people. And I took out my passport and I said, I want you to know that as an American citizen, I am carrying around a passport because I don't feel safe in my own country. Because look at me, I could be perceived as Muslim, I could be perceived as Mexican, I could be perceived as any of those people. So all of us in this room need to realize that in this company, in your neighborhoods, in your churches, in places you have no idea, those people are us, okay? Mm-hmm. And so that was a place where I had to make a choice. When I was hearing it, I was so uncomfortable. I was so kind of hurt. And I said, you know what? And the beauty is that there's always a moment where you step in and you create a space for others to learn something that they would not learn if you stayed silent. And so people in that room began to cry because finally there was someone they really knew personally that was sharing that story. And sometimes it's very easy to ignore the stories because they seem so foreign. So that was, and I think we shared here, it could be a negative and a positive at the same time, but that was how I felt and then how others felt.
Yeah, Magda, thank you for sharing. That's very powerful. I mean, two really powerful statements around that. With the first example is how we make choices, right? The choices we make to insert ourselves into our community or into any area that we feel we're going to feel the energy that's going to continue to lift us. And I'm glad you and I made a choice years ago to be there for each other constantly, right? Our lunches, our get-togethers, you know, they have been really, really great throughout the years for us. Those are choices we both made. When you talk about, you know, those people and that's us, that's very, very powerful because it really is about understanding what you said there is we can't be silent. We have a responsibility to our broader community, not just our identity, our broader community and how we're going to solve. So again, you know, as we think about, you know, with Luz and the support system and tapping into that, you with choices and with, you know, making sure that we're not silent. Those are powerful things that we all can sort of think about. How are those playing out in those moments that matter? So thank you both for sharing that. So Marieli, I'm going to go over to you because when you talked about your examples, you talked about Hurricane Maria, I literally felt it. I felt that moment again, because I remember how difficult that was for so many people, particularly people that I love and I care about. And then you talked about stretching yourself. And I literally could sit here and feel again, you know, those moments where you're being stretched to the max and there's this inner voice going on. So I want you to talk about your brand, right? Because we all develop these brands, and if we haven't, we need to. Let's dig into a little bit in either example or both examples. How did that play into your brand in those moments that mattered?
Absolutely. I will tell you, you know, the experience when I was pushed out of my comfort zone, one of the biggest learning for me was how you need to balance yourself as a leader. And, you know, I spent too many years in an area that it was very comfortable for me, but the biggest lessons learned as a leader, you need to have IQ, EQ, and CQ. And if any of those three is zero, EQ time IQ and CQ is going to be zero. So you have to balance those three. And I think that for me was the biggest lessons learned. It's like we could be in roles that we feel very comfortable, but you're not stretching yourself in your curiosity in learning something new. And I will tell the emotional intelligence, it is huge. And that's a big area that we have to bring as leaders. And I will tell you, our nature is very comfortable about that. You know, we're good listeners. We're good in just bringing people together. And that for me was very big in my brand, in how you pay it forward too. The example that I have from my advocate, it was exactly how we need to do and the roles that we play and how to pay it forward. So balanced leadership, it's you have to make sure that you work on those three, IQ, EQ, and CQ. It's not one only. And stretching yourself out of your comfort zone will help you through that balance.
That's excellent. And the pay it forward. I mean, it's just being focused on those three areas, but also the balance and the pay it forward are so incredibly important as well. So as we continue this conversation, and you've shared all great examples, I want to dig in a little bit more around that. And it's really to talk about what changes came out of some of these moments. Did anything in you change? Did you change your surroundings? What did you change from these moments that mattered? So, Luz, I'm going to go over to you.
I think what changed from those moments that matter. I think my perspective, as well as gratitude, and what Mariela said about paying it forward. That goes to my support, system that I was referring to earlier. It was a very challenging conversation, but knowing that I had that support system, I realized it empowered me to recognize that, paying it forward, it's now my turn. There's going to be other folks similar to me who look like me, who are going to be in very similar situations. And it empowered me to think that I want to be part of our senior leadership team, invigorated my purpose from a career perspective, because I wanted to be part of that table where we discuss change and be that change enabler. So it kind of propelled me forward when I think about what I want to do next in my career.
That's great. And that propel you forward is so important, because we have to ask ourselves constantly, what is propelling me forward? What is happening in my journey right now? And if we're not feeling that energy boost of what's propelling us forward, then something is wrong. Something is wrong, or maybe it is a choice at that point in your journey, because that's what you need at that point in your journey. You don't need to be propelled forward at that time. But when you start to feel the sense that you need to, and it's not happening, then you have to question yourself, what do I need to change here? So Mariela, over to you with this similar question. What has changed, or what have you changed?
Embrace change. That's basically the stage. I definitely have learned to embrace change. And actually, I just had a flashback about a funny story from my dad when he was teaching me to bike. He basically, I remember he said, you don't need to worry about it, because if you fell down, you're not going to go below this level. You're not going to disappear. There's no black hole. And I think we just need to put things in perspective like that. We have to embrace change. And I have to say, I have a new favorite song. I don't know how many times you guys have seen Encanto, but that about the butterflies and embracing the world is going to keep changing around us, and we need to keep looking forward, not behind you, and keep flying. I think that just that attitude, that positive framework, because you have not much to lose. You can change again. If this is something that is an area that you're not going to feel comfortable with, that is your choice. It is your choice. It's not someone else's choice. And I think it's important that we recognize that.
I love that example from your dad. So thank you for sharing that. Anytime we share family examples, it gets me all, emotional, because they're so important in our foundation, in our journey. And that is so true. You're not going to go below the ground. You may get some bruises and some scratches, but you're not going to be sucked into the ground, and you will survive this. And I think if we think about that, and what we go through every day, we go through tough times, we may get some bruises, but we are going to survive it. So, and I think embracing change, to your point, Mariela, is really, really important as well. So thank you for that. Magda, like I've alluded to earlier, I've known you for a long time. I've witnessed your incredible journey. I mean, I've just been in awe of things that you have accomplished in your career. And I want to talk to you about this journey and moments that matter. Were there moments, or have there been moments where you think you missed the mark in some of those moments that matter, that they should have mattered in the moment, but they were missed? And if they were missed, why?
Oh my goodness. Well, Nellie, I just have to say, I have been watching you on your journey, and thank you for being a role model to me and to so many others. I would say in this long journey, so I've been at Verizon 33 years this May. And what I would say to you, in those 3 decades, there's been a lot of change. And there've been a lot of moments. And I try to live in the moment. So what I would just encourage all of us is we're really not missing the moment. I believe we sometimes ignore the moment because we're afraid, because of something that was said to us that perhaps defined how we see ourselves, that voice in our head that just lingers. There's lots of reasons why we choose to ignore the moment. I don't think we really miss it. And so along my journey, I know that I have postponed some responses. I have chosen that that's not the moment, that's not the teachable moment, that's not the learning moment, but I'm making choices all the time. And so we've talked, here in the gallery that there are positive and negatives, and even a negative is a positive. So in that moment of that stretch, right, you don't see much positive in it. But when you look back, you do. But doesn't mean you missed the moment. You didn't miss it. You saw it, but you saw it in a particular way, and it served you at that moment, right, in whatever ways. So I just think that we're being mindful is so important. And it's one of the things that has come over time for me is to really be still, to be reflective, to be silent, so that we really are listening to the narratives in our own head, and then going to those places of support in family, at work, where we can validate, because we don't have to do it alone. But I think that the biggest moments that I honestly have had, Nellie, are moments with myself. Those moments where I ground myself into who I am, into hearing my voice, into calling Nellie if I need a helpline, into really making sure that we have those moments with self, because we're even making that choice to stay busy, to just sometimes not even go there. You don't even want to be quiet and still, because those moments can be the scariest moments of all. Right, Luz was talking about certain choices and things, right? So I just want to share that there've been, if there were moments I missed, I don't remember them.
That's fair. That's fair, Magda. I want us to sit with one of your comments here as a collective group, because it is a mind shift, and it's a mind shift that I think we will all benefit from if we haven't had that yet. The question was, were there moments that were missed? And Magda quickly shifted that. And she said they were ignored. And I think that is so important, because too many times, to the point that she's raised, Marieli and Luz, is that sometimes these choices or things that we have to do, sometimes it is easier to ignore things than it is to pay attention to them, to make the choice to pay attention. So I want us, with all of the nuggets we've gotten here today, I want this one to sit out there too and let it linger for a while, because what moments are we choosing to ignore? So I was given a few more minutes, because I do pay attention to the text messages that I'm getting from production. So I was given a few more minutes to close this out. And I'm excited that I got those 3 extra minutes, because what I want to do is give each of you an opportunity in very short sentences, is just say what you want to leave the audience with today regarding those moments. What words of wisdom do you want to share or add to that what you already shared with the participants? So Luz, I'm going to start with you. What are some of the words you want to leave the participants with today regarding those moments that matter?
Wow, you have to go with me first, right? Okay.
Because I know you can handle it, Luz. I've known you for a long time. You got this.
Thank you for that support, Nellie. I think for the participants, the words I leave you with is, take the risk. There's so much that can be learned from taking a risk. When you have those butterflies or that moment of fear, I would use that as energy to move you forward. And not be afraid to take the risk. And in our career and in your personal life, there's going to be so many moments. And I would want you guys to be like, I took that opportunity. I raised my hand. I said yes, versus having that feeling that what if. let's minimize the what ifs and let's do the yes, I am here.
I love that. Minimize the what ifs. Oh my goodness, so many things to just keep lingering out there today. Let's add that. Minimize those what ifs, because I mean, they're just not helpful. We can learn, but repeating them is not going to help us. Okay, Magda, I'm going to go over to you.
Thanks, Nellie. For me, I would say that we've got to realize the dualities that exist in every moment, and that it's not just one. So when we think about the word bold, doesn't mean you're never fearful. Doesn't mean you can't be courageous. And so sometimes we second guess ourselves because we're like, oh my gosh, I'm so afraid. But you may be afraid in this moment, but you're still bold and you're still courageous. And the same thing as we think about those moments where we might be emboldened. We might have been offended in that moment. And yet we can be gracious at the same time. And so sometimes we feel like it's an either or. And in these moments, I just encourage us to imagine and stay open to the possibility that it's a both and. It's a moment to learn. It's a moment to teach. It's a moment to be bold and to be gracious. So that would be, for me, those dualities are really quite important, and something that, for Nellie's sake, I will just say my mother used to say it all the time, right? It's not just this or that. How do we create the both?
I love that. You know how much I love examples of parents and family members. So thank you for sharing that, Magda, because I love is the bold and you just reminded me of something that I did yesterday with someone that called me that was going through a very difficult, challenging experience in her journey and her organization. And I listened to those pain points. And my immediate reaction was to say to her, be gracious in the moment and don't let this experience derail you. Don't let it derail you, because when we experience these challenging moments and when people test us, and we're being tested in so many ways, the first thing we want to do is, show up in a very assertive and aggressive way, and we want to solve for ourselves, and all that is understood, and we do need to be assertive and solve for ourselves. But we also have to step back, let the moment and the grace infuse us, and more importantly, not let ourselves be derailed. And that's the bold, and be bold to solve for yourself. So thank you for sharing that, Magda. That's really good. All right, Marieli, over to you. What are some of the words that you want to leave this audience with today?
I will add to what Luz and Magda have shared. Take ownership of your career script. Don't let others write it for you. Mm-hmm. That inner voice, lose regrets, focusing what is fulfillment in your life, and just don't let other person write your career script or your life script. You own it. So write it.
I think that is extremely powerful as well, because it is about owning your own narrative. So if you want to own your narrative and you want to have some sense of some control of what is being said about you when you're not in the room, the best way to do that is to start creating your own narrative through your brand and how you position yourself. So I think that is really, really key for all of us here today as well. So as we've been thinking about the focus on how we started, right, with the words of each panelist, and I said courageous, Magda said blessed, Marieli optimistic, persistent, and Luz bold. I think we can hear throughout their conversation all the ways that this has shown up for them. And I want you all to think about it, if you haven't done so already. What is that word that drives you? What is that word that guides you, that creates your narrative as well? Because that's really, really important. And as you think about all of these gems that we've gotten through the panelists today, it's minimize the what ifs, is the bold and, is, the lessons from our parents, is all these different things, is the, continue to lift others, and, how you pay it forward. All these things, we take on a huge responsibility by being in tune to all of this. But I want us to really embrace that responsibility, because it is up to us to continue to create an environment where we see other Latinas like us shine and succeed and get to those next levels. And I am so looking forward to the day that we're all in person again and that we are having this conversation and going to get a tea or cafecito, whatever the case is, because I miss those days. I haven't missed being on a plane every week, but I have missed some of these days. And I can't wait for us to get back to that. So as you go to your breakout sessions now and you start focusing on your conversation, I want you to infuse some of this in you. Be bold, speak up, share those moments that you really would like some advice on. Think about that. I mean, I've reached out to people. Magda said that she uses that phone to call me, but I've done the same with her, is pick up that text message. I need to talk to you. Is those trusted advisors that you can go to. Carolina, I mean, is one that I have her trusted with the times that I call her. I need to run something by her. Just this morning, I'm like, to run it by you, right? You have to have that group of people. So as I think about these moments that matter, I think about my moments that matter. And then we're going to close this and go to breakout sessions, is the following. Whenever you're feeling like you're not feeling 100% at peace, whenever you're feeling that sense of anxiety, that nervous energy, lack of sleep, whatever's happening to your daily pattern that has shifted, then chances are you need to pause and you need to sit with it and do a lot of self-reflection. Magda talked about that, right? Being tuned with herself and having those conversations with herself. So I would encourage all of you to continue to be present with yourself. Give yourself the gift of grace because you've earned it, and engage in the conversation with our panel. So I want to say, I'm in the breakouts, I should say. I want to say a big thank you to Carolina and Yesenia for walking us through the research on Better to Belong Moments That Matter. A big thank you to Luz, to Magda, and to Marieli for sharing and being so open and transparent with your journey. And a big thank you to HITEC, who continues to bring us together to evolve our network of Latina women. So I am going to say so long and thank you, and enjoy the breakout sessions, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.